For the last several seasons, Kentucky's injury list has been piling up, making some wonder if they are cursed, and the numbers behind it are almost impossible to believe. We'll get to that, but first, let's talk about what injuries do to a team, the way they steal hope before you even realize it's gone. Here's a scenario. Your favorite team's season has just started. They have put together a roster that has you hopeful and excited. They've won some games early that have some people saying they might be a title contender. You think so too. You're starting to believe. You're starting to imagine celebrations, rings, banners, and parades. But then, a concussion, a misstep, a jump, a sneeze, and poof. The dreams are dead. You now find yourself wondering what if, as you become forever haunted by the memories that were never made. If there is anything that the 2024-25 season has taught me, it's that no matter how good you think your team is, the season's goals can be wiped out by one play early in the year. As a Dolphins fan, I had to watch as Tua sat on the sideline with another head injury as the Fins' playoffs hopes ended basically in week 2. And I found it interesting that Mike McDaniel never really made excuses as to why the Dolphins were losing games, even though the reason was so very obvious. I really feel like coaches don't really want to admit publicly how massive it is when a starter goes down. Instead, they'll say something like this.
We're not leaving any space for that. I have a good team. The guys on the court are good players.
I believe that they're doing this for 2 reasons. 1, they don't want to sound like they're making excuses. And 2, they don't want the players filling in to think that the coach doesn't believe in them. But obviously, it's a big deal. From 2003 to 2019, the New England Patriots went to the playoffs all but one season, and I bet you can guess what happened that year. I mean, we just did a video on how Kentucky football can look very different right now if Will Levis didn't get hurt down in Ole Miss. Well, Kentucky basketball could look very different right now if it wasn't for the injuries that have plagued the program the last 5 seasons. Kentucky basketball has been unlucky, snake-bitten, cursed, whatever you want to call it, the last several years. It's true that every program deals with injuries, but Kentucky's injury luck has been particularly bad. It produced a dumbfounding stat that I just could not accept. Kirk Risa got hurt in the first week of December, along with Lamont Butler. If Kerr does not return, by the end of the season, Kentucky will have played less than 28% of their games with a full roster in the last 3 years. I had to know how that stacked up against other teams, so I dug a little deeper. I mean, going through each single team would just take time I do not have. So when comparing Kentucky to the other Blue Bloods, Kansas, the last 5 seasons, has played 76% of their games at full strength. Duke, 72% of their games. North Carolina, 78% of their games. The SEC champions over the last 5 years, 82% at full strength. Going through Kentucky in that same time frame, with the help of Wildcats Tongue on Twitter to visualize this, you can see Kentucky has played just 17% of their games at full strength. 17%. So another way of looking at it was to look at the 1 seeds for the last several seasons and how Kentucky stacked up against them. What we are looking at here is the total number of games missed by players who averaged 10 minutes or more. In 2024, UConn had 9, with Castle missing 6, but returning for conference play. Purdue, 2, and no starters missed a game. North Carolina, 3, starters missed 1 game. Houston had 37, but for the starters, they only missed 1 game. Meanwhile, Kentucky had a total of 54 missed games from players who averaged over 10 minutes. In 2023, Purdue had 5 missed games from players averaging 10 minutes or more, 1 from starters. Alabama, 3, starters missed 1 game. UConn, the national champion, 6, starters missed 3. Kansas, 6, starters missed 3. Houston, 9, starters missed 2. Meanwhile, Kentucky, 21, all from starters. And in 2022, due to CJ Frederick getting hurt before the season even started, Kentucky had 49 missed games. And it doesn't get better any of the previous years for Kentucky. In those 4 seasons since COVID, Kentucky has had 124 missed games from players averaging 10 minutes or more. All of those 1 seeds combined were 125. So that's 150 missed games from players averaging 10 minutes or more the last 5 seasons. In John Calipari's first 5 seasons at Kentucky, that number was 30. That is a 400% increase in missed games by players averaging 10 minutes or more. Kentucky has had 16 players in the last 3 seasons miss a game due to injury or illness. Kentucky had a total of 17 from 2009 to 2019. Even more crazy, in John Calipari's first 3 years, where they went to an Elite Eight, a Final Four, and won a national title, Kentucky had just 3 players miss time because of injuries or illness. Imagine if one of those players from the 2011 team gets hurt. Are they a Final Four team? If somebody goes down on the 2012 team, is Kentucky still searching for number 8? Really, John Calipari's tenure at Kentucky can be broken into 2 parts. One, where he avoided injuries and hung banners, and how in his last 5 to 6 seasons, he had more players in boots than a bachelorette party in Nashville. And of course, talking about injuries, playing the what-if game is meaningless. It will only drive you insane. What if Derek Anderson could have played against Arizona in 1997? What about Willie Cauley-Stein in 2014? Alex Poythress in 2015? These aren't really excuses. The losses still count. There's no asterisk next to them. Part of managing a roster is dealing with injuries. Part of being an athlete is avoiding injuries and recovering from them. But of course, it matters. So when Mark Pope says,
we're not leaving any space for that. Like, I have a good team. Like, the guys on the court are good players.
he may really believe that. But also, what is he gonna say? Well, how the frick do you expect me to win with these guys? Every team over the last several years has dealt with injuries. Not everybody is losing guys at the rate that Kentucky is.
When you go through each injury individually, you'll see that it's just freak accidents. It's bad luck, or they're cursed.
But I refuse to believe that there's just nothing we can do about that. When I brought up these stats on KS Board, Kentucky fans got creative with how to solve this problem. I was raised and confirmed Catholic, so I reached out to a deacon friend of mine in Louisville to see what could be done. That is, of course, after Googling if deacons could also perform blessings or exorcisms.
Yeah, I gave some thought to what you were asking, and I think it's a great idea. Here's my thoughts.
Okay.
Each diocese is like a flock, and when you start to move from one flock to the other, they get a little bit funny.
Okay. I didn't know how to pitch this to you guys in a way that would make you understand that I'm very serious about this. Very serious. That is why I sent this video to you, Archdiocese of Lexington. The Chicago Cubs did do this in 2008, and 8 short years later, won the World Series. To be clear, I'm not asking God to help us win games. I was taught in school, you're not supposed to do that. But I was taught that you could ask God to look out for the safety of the players. And I'm only asking that he does that 72 to 77% of the time on average over the course of 3 seasons. I'm dead serious about this. If there is something that we can do, if we can do a blessing at Wildcat Cole Lodge, if we can do a blessing at Rupp Arena, whatever we got to do, I'm on board. So please get back with me and let's see if we can reverse this injury curse. For Kentucky Sports Radio, I'm Stephen Peak. Go Cats.